Tjenare bästa vänner och nu så sitter jag och mysar med Blizzard-gänget för tillfället. Vi har, eller Overwatch-gänget om man ska vara riktigt specifik. Vi har en senior game director och en narrative designer som vi nu ska prata med.
Hi, I'm Aaron Keller. I'm the game director on Overwatch.
And I am Jude Stacey. I'm a senior narrative designer on Overwatch.
You mentioned that you've been working with Overwatch since like the very day one.
Yeah.
Development started in 2013.
Yeah, I did.
Release was in 2016, am I right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's never like a straight line when developing a game or a product or a project or something like that. What are some of, is there any parts, like any features that got scrapped during development that you kind of miss or that you're sad about?
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting question. I've never been asked that before. And one of the things that that we were experimenting with on the original Overwatch that we ended up scrapping was a talent system. And it would have been a way for you to customize your heroes in the middle of gameplay. And we always wanted to be able to do something like that in the game. But the first time we tried it, we realized that Overwatch, as a hero shooter, it can be complicated, right? So to really excel at the game, you need to know not just how your own hero plays and have like a muscle memory, you know, with all of their weapons and abilities, but you need to know what everyone else on the battlefield does too. And so as we are experimenting with that system while we were building the heroes, it just became too much for players to handle. But we knew that there was something there and that we'd like to get back to it someday. And so I think one of the really exciting things about Overwatch this year is we've implemented two different versions of a system like that. Earlier this year, what was it, in season 15, we introduced our perk system. And it's a way for players to be able to kind of like customize their hero a bit over the course of a match. And it sometimes it'll just give you some of the tools you might feel like you need to either emphasize your hero or counter what the enemy team's doing. And the next season in 16, we introduced like a totally new way of playing Overwatch, which is our stadium game mode. And it allows you to select like really big transformational powers for your hero in between rounds over the course of a match. And so those were two things that I think kind of harken back to that system, but they also go into this sort of new philosophy that we have with developing the game, which is like we want to be taking bigger risks and bigger swings with Overwatch that actually affect your core gameplay as we evolve the game over time.
Okay. And Jude, you work with the narrative side of things in Overwatch, am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And like, obviously in a hero shooter, you want to create a hero that's that people can maybe relate to or get like a clear image. Okay, this is like tank type hero, or for example, like how much passion goes into creating this sort of like rich background for each hero, because I can imagine that the players, they're never as invested in a backstory and in the lore as the creator themselves are. Is that sometimes difficult to stay motivated for that reason?
I think you'd be surprised. I think some of our players are really invested. I know, speaking for myself, I haven't been working on the game since launch, but I've been playing it for a really long time. And the story is what got me into Overwatch, and I think that's true of a lot of our fans. So for me, when I'm working on a backstory for a hero, the target is always to get them to care as much as me.
Yeah.
Right? I would love that. That's the goal.
And how do you do that? Because that's not easy, I can imagine.
Yeah. I mean, for heroes like Vendetta, who's our latest hero, a melee DPS hero, it was about looking back into our own lore and seeing what people had connected with before and trying to pull back that. For other heroes, it's been about researching. I mean, all of them. We do a lot of research into cultural background. We work with an amazing localization team to sort of get a full understanding of a region where a hero is from. And something about Overwatch is that it's a global game, so we try and have a really diverse cast from all over the world. And I think by doing that, we sort of ground the heroes in places that our players know or love or are from. And in that way, they see themselves in the heroes, right? I know we've got Freya was our first Danish hero this year. Vendetta is our first Italian hero. We're always trying to bring in new cultural backgrounds, and I think that alone as a touchstone is a really exciting way for players to connect. But as far as like day to day, I mean, each hero has probably around 600 voice lines in game alone. And then we do a lot of work to write comics and short stories outside of the game to help people better understand who they are and what they care about. And recently we've pulled that into the game with the narrative viewer, which is really awesome. So players can access that pretty much whenever in the game.
Yeah. I talked to a member of your team yesterday, and I heard a rumor that that we're here in Stockholm now, and you guys were here last year as well for Dreamhack. And the rumor has it that you guys were eating a pizza in Stockholm, and that's when you cracked the idea for the is it the newest hero or the second newest hero? Or
Vendetta is the latest hero.
Yeah, tell me a bit about that
yeah,
story.
It's close. I think we had the idea for Vendetta before Stockholm, but Aaron and I got early to that pizza restaurant and had some time one-on-one to talk. And I sort of pitched him an idea for what might come next for this hero, and I think it sort of spawned a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, and I don't want to like go into too many spoilers here, but we talked a lot just about, you know, a bit of like not just who Vendetta is, but what motivates her and what she wants to do. And so I think if people look at the latest animated short that we put out, or the hero trailer that we put out for Vendetta, they can see that, I mean, she's a really cool character, but she has ambitions. And we would like to get into what those ambitions are and kind of explore those and put those out in front of players. But they're probably just going to have to wait till next year to see what some of those are.
Yeah. You guys are a Blizzard product, and for example, there's this whole Warcraft universe with a lot of games, World of Warcraft, Hearthstone, and Warcraft. Overwatch being its very own thing, its very own universe, story-wise and vibe-wise. Also, I feel it's faster, it's more vibrant, it's more colorful. Is it like? Is it difficult to distance yourself from that, like, or like early development and narrative-wise? Like, are there any Easter eggs like connecting to the World of Warcraft lore or anything? Like, how has the mindset been to be your very own thing inside Blizzard?
I think Blizzard excels at making universes. You know, so there's these spaces that people can just get lost in a bit, and you get that with all of our different franchises, you know, StarCraft, Warcraft, and Diablo. And when we were originally working on Overwatch, our ambition and our like hopes and dreams were just to be able to sit alongside those other franchises, you know, because they're kind of like institutions now in the gaming industry. And so, yeah, so we started to kind of like flesh out our world the same way. We wanted it to be deep, we wanted it to be rich, and we wanted all of the characters that were in it to really stand out and be like these really strong individuals with a ton of personality, while still also playing into all these different archetypes and fantasies. And I think like one of the interesting things is the first hero that we built was Tracer. But the first hero that we made art for was Torbjorn. And the reason why is because Torbjorn kind of fit into this fantasy, or he was like pushed as far as we could to where he's almost like a dwarf in Warcraft. And he kind of has that same that same sort of like pushed style and personality that you would find there. And so even from the very beginning, it was our intention to be able to do that with our heroes and for the whole universe.
I guess my question is, and that's really interesting, but is there like this little voice that screams in the back of your head when you make, for example, a character that feels dwarven, World of Warcraft-ish? Is there like a voice screaming, "Careful now, we're drifting towards something that we already have in Blizzard"? Like, is there like this tenacious feeling of doing your own thing, or?
I think that's something that we naturally don't have as much of a problem with. Overwatch is so grounded in our world, And I think Warcraft, one of the amazing things about it is that it's its own fantasy entirely. In the canon of Overwatch, actually, if you watch Overwatch's very first cinematic, I think the security guard is playing Hearthstone on his like tablet, right? So in the canon of Overwatch, if you see the Blizzard world map, Warcraft and Hearthstone and StarCraft are all games, right? It's like our world. We know that those aren't real places. And I think when you step out of the meta like that and give your heroes the opportunity to play the game in their hands if they want, I think it sort of becomes less of a problem. Our heroes acknowledge our games as the same fantasy that we do, right?
How take me through the process of like connecting back to the pizza restaurant story and those kinds of things. Like a new hero, are they all different in how the development process starts, or do you guys have like a template and like this structured workflow that you start with a sketch, you start with an idea, you start with reading up on ancient folklore and drawing inspiration from that, or are they all different? Are each hero born different creatively?
I would say there's kind of like three paths. I mean, good ideas come from everywhere, right? Every voice matters has been a Blizzard thing for so long. So usually I feel like the idea either comes from gameplay, art, or narrative, where one of those teams will have something that is so inspiring that the rest of the team will rally around it. For Vendetta, it was the gameplay of the melee hero, and then art quickly followed with Gladiator, and narrative with the rich history of Italy that we already have in Overwatch and sort of connecting that. But it really can depend. I think our heroes do a really good job of creating that fantasy, as Aaron was talking about. So gameplay, narrative, and art, and all of the disciplines that work on a hero are all really talking to each other in that sense. We have like, the one thing that doesn't differ is we have like a pre-prototyping phase where we work out the basics of the hero and then sort of polish that into something to present to a wider strike team. And that's when we pull in all kinds of departments like tech art, things like that. And by the time we get to that kickoff, everyone has this vision of who the hero is going to be. And from there on, we're all really aligned and working together to make that feel real, I would say.
So usually we have a really strong vision of who that hero is going to be. Sometimes there's some changes in there.
Yeah.
But so take me through like a regular day at the office. You mentioned that teamwork is essential when you guys are being creative. If it's like narrative stuff or development stuff, like how does it all work? How does it all look like? Are you guys just like handing out orders and then sitting back and relaxing, or are you guys involved in hands-on brainstorming with what's the?
It's always going to be different depending on the phase of like the hero. That the phase of hero development that you're in, or the phase of like any type of project that you're in there. So there is an example like early on with Vendetta, where the hero designer that was doing the prototypes, Josh No, he'd actually made 3 different prototypes for the hero. And we all jumped into a play test and tried them out. And everybody will be playing, and then you jump into feedback sessions afterwards, and you just kind of discuss, like how you thought each one of them played, what the sort of potential was. And it was interesting in that play test. There was 2 heroes. One was a melee hero, and another one was like this hypermobile character that we just called Chimney Jump, and they could kind of like pop all around the map and throw something out and sort of like teleport to it. And we didn't think either hero was really great on their own, but we thought that there was parts of each kit that were really, really cool. And so we ended up sort of like blending those together to make Vendetta. And that's just like an example of like one stage along the way, but you're constantly doing that. But you're starting from something very broad and moving narrower and narrower, so to where like playtest towards the end, you might just be talking about whether like one particular ability is working right, or even whether just like a certain like ability or weapon does a little too much or a little too little damage.
I think Blizzard, this is just a personal opinion, but I think Blizzard is good at like packaging stuff and creating like a universe around a product. And Overwatch not being the only hero shooter out there, what do you guys do to stand out and get a jump on the competitors out there?
I mean, what we focus on is doing what we do best. And so with the heroes that we make, as Jude was saying earlier, we put a lot of time and energy into creating their personalities. And we want them to feel like real people, like real characters. And so, yeah, we'll have upwards of 600, plus voice lines for every one of these characters. We develop our own backstories and lore. We have countless pages internally where we're doing that. But we put that same amount of attention and detail into every part of our process. It takes us at least a year, if not well over a year, from that initial moment of prototyping before that hero comes out. And a lot of that is just us iterating in playtest and talking things over, and then trying to refine that either hero or map or feature that we're putting into the game to be the best possible, most polished version that it can be. And then I think that when you talk about Blizzard packaging things together, I think we do try to do what some of our other games do. A lot of times we tend to think of ourselves as a hero factory. And not just Overwatch, but the entire company is a hero factory. When you look at all the different characters in Diablo, StarCraft, and Warcraft, there's so many iconic beings that people can always reference. We are constantly trying to do that with every single hero that we put into the game. And if you look at a hero like Vendetta, she is this archetypical gladiator that as soon as you see her, you kind of just get a sense of what she can do in the game. And then as soon as you hear her talk, you get a sense of what her personality and what she brings to the table.
Does that ever get stressful? Because you guys have kind of set the tone for perfectionism and vastness and richness in everything you do. Does that ever screw up your motivation? But isn't this just enough? No, we have to go the extra mile. You know what I mean?
I mean, I think it can be stressful for sure,
Yeah.
but we love what we do, right? I mean, there is a certain satisfaction and joy in trying to reach for the best we can possibly do all the time. And I think, yeah, there's pressure, we want to get it right. But Overwatch as a game also does a really good job of listening to the community, making changes as we need to, and as I said before, we do a ton of research. So nothing's created in a vacuum, right? It's not just one person that bears the load of trying to make the best thing we can. It's the whole team working together and supporting each other and helping each other out as we need to make it happen.
Yeah, I'll just add to that a little bit because I think that there's pressure also. And it's not necessarily to always one-up ourselves. We are always trying to make the game better. We do tell our players that we're trying to evolve this game. And over time, we always want the game to be sort of progressing to a better state. But at the same time, there's a live service game. And so it does mean that we're constantly putting new things out. I talked about perks in season 15 and then Stadium in 16. But Stadium also, we released a new hero in season 16 and in season 18. And now in season 20, we're doing it. We've got more in development. And so we're trying to make the game better, but you're doing it on timelines too. And so you've always got that next sort of milestone ahead. And I think that's probably the thing that the team probably feels the most pressure on is not just hey, how do we make something better, but how do we do it while also delivering the amount of content and features that all of our players are looking for. And I think we've done, if you look at this year, at 2025, we've done a pretty good job of that, where almost every season we're introducing big features. It wasn't just Stadium and perks. We did hero bans and map voting. We did a giant refresh on perks also in season 18. And then we're in season 19 here, and people are already playing Vendetta, and there's some big things on the horizon.
We have some creative people in the audience watching this, and no matter what you're doing, if you're doing music, if you're doing visual arts, or developing games, anything creative, you, on a bad day, you get the sense that everything has already been done. I can't possibly come up with anything brand new that's going to revolutionize anything. How do you guys combat that? How do you guys tackle those days when the motivation is low and you feel like you have nothing new to come up with?
I think, at least from a writing perspective, you can always make a sentence that no one else has made before. And it might not be good, but it's a starting point, right? I think there's something really fun about writing where you can sort of take a sentiment or an idea that has been floating around in your head or in the consciousness of the greater audience, right? And think, what is a new way to say this? And even if you're on a day where you can't think of a new way, there's other things to look at, right? We have such a wide array of voice lines we have to write for our heroes. We have so many different backgrounds that we pull from when we create our heroes that I think there's always something to there's something new to look forward to, I would say. So even when it feels tough, I think there's always more on the horizon for sure.
Yeah, I think the last thing the Overwatch team is worried about is running out of ideas.
Yeah.
Lucky you.